In 1906, Francis Galton went to a county fair and he asked 800 people to predict the weight of an ox that was for sale there. To his and everyone else's surprise, their collective guess of £1,197 was only £1 out from the actual £1,198 weight of the ox. This shows us that under the right circumstances, groups can be remarkably intelligent and often smarter than the smartest individuals within them. And this challenges our intuitive belief that only experts can make good decisions. So under the right conditions, groups can consistently outperform individual experts. And this holds true even when the group contain less knowledgeable members. For example, in other areas, groups of doctors tend to make more accurate diagnosis than individuals. NASA rely heavily on teams of engineers to solve complex problems rather than single experts. And open source software is booming based on the collaboration of millions of volunteers around the world. What we see is different perspectives catch different aspects of problems and challenges. Individual errors and biases tend to cancel each other out, and this collective knowledge exceeds individual capabilities. For crowd wisdom to work, we need 3 essential ingredients. We need a diversity of opinions, and this needs to be as diverse as possible, so we need people from a wide range of backgrounds, experience levels, job areas, departments, and so on. We want various levels of expertise as well, and where possible, people with contrasting approaches to problem solving. We need independent thinking, where people can form opinions without being swayed by others, where there is no groupthink or social pressure or domineering management in the room. And we need them to be able to make decisions based on their personal knowledge and analysis. We also want a decentralized structure where there is no top-down control, local knowledge can be aggregated, and there is individual autonomy in the decision-making process. So there's a few examples that come to mind. Stock markets are remarkably efficient. They show price discovery through millions of trades that are conducted every minute. Stock prices can adjust within seconds of earning announcements, but this only works when traders act independently and there is no collusion. Google search is a bit of a black box still, and it has more challenges now than it did in the early days of PageRank, but it's still a remarkable achievement that looks at billions upon billions of web pages and makes a quality assessment of those pages, although sometimes flawed, through collective user behaviour. Wikipedia has tens of millions of articles that have all come about through volunteer collaboration. It's a self-correcting environment through community editing. For example, vandalism is typically corrected within minutes. And then we have sports betting, where betting lines are remarkably accurate and they aggregate the knowledge of thousands of bettors. For example, Super Bowl spreads are historically accurate to within 3 points. And in terms of competition, there are also election predictions, where the prediction markets often outperform individual polls. For example, the Iowa electronic market has a strong track record in presidential elections. If we dig a bit more into the financial market, we see the price discovery process, where, as we've mentioned, millions of transactions are processed every day and new information gets incorporated within seconds. This can be an earnings report, an earnings warning, or some other bit of positive or negative press. There's a built-in feedback mechanism where overvalued assets attract sellers and undervalued assets attract buyers. So the system naturally moves towards an equilibrium. Capital flows to promising opportunities while poor investments get weeded out. And as a case study, during the Challenger space shuttle disaster, the market identified the responsible company within 13 minutes, and the stock price of that company was adjusted before the investigation into the disaster even began. Now, this only works when information flows freely. Participants act independently, and there is no one single player that dominates the market. Warning signs to look out for where the wisdom of crowds can go wrong is when everyone thinks alike, this diversity of thought disappears. So the biggest example probably recently is 2008 housing crisis, financial crisis, where groupthink in the financial sector led to overlooking risks. Social pressure, when people feel pressured to conform rather than share their honest opinions, we end up with groupthink and none of the wisdom of crowd benefits. For example, corporate meetings where junior staff don't feel comfortable challenging senior staff. Emotional contagion is when emotions can spread rapidly throughout a group. For example, stock market panics, where fear triggers mass selling and the emotions can override rational judgment. And information cascades are when people start copying others instead of using their own judgment. For example, you might see people joining a queue for a nightclub or a restaurant that the people know nothing about, but because it's a queue, they think it must be good, so they get in the queue. You see a lot of this recently with the crypto markets, for example. So if we understand the power and limitations of collective intelligence, how do we implement it successfully? Well, we need a system that supports it. So the architecture, whatever systems we have in place, must support information flow. We want some mechanisms where we can aggregate knowledge. And we want a system where people are encouraged to take part and do so without risk to themselves or their careers. We want some incentives where we can align individual and collective goals. So we want to balance that intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. For example, on forums or Stack Overflow, you might have a reputation system where people get likes or upvotes based on their contribution. And proper incentives can drive quality upwards. We want some independent safeguards that can prevent groupthink and the cascading effects we've mentioned. We also want a mechanism for anonymous input where people might not feel comfortable putting their names to certain thoughts, but they still want to be able to share them anyway. For example, in science, we have the double-blind peer review process. And then we need an effective aggregation system where we have a way to combine these individual contributions. And we want some balance between human and algorithmic synthesis. So we're not expecting people to do it entirely without computers, but equally we don't want someone to just take everyone's thoughts and put it in ChatGPT to see what happens. Digital era, having mentioned AI, the digital age has created unprecedented opportunities for collective intelligence that not that long ago no one could possibly have imagined. Billions of people now collaborate with work online, from Wikipedia to open source software. We have real-time aggregation, and the speed of information processing is higher than ever before. For example, we see social media often detecting earthquakes faster than the seismic monitors. There are no geographic barriers in the way that there used to be, so talent can contribute from anywhere, and this cross-cultural perspective can enhance our outcomes. It also means we span time zones, so projects can be worked on 24/7 from somewhere in the world. And we've got AI, so where does that fit in? How do we ensure that the outputs are fair and balanced, and we're not using tainted data or tainted algorithms and so on? So if you want to put this into work at your organization, what are the future implications? Well, you've got to seek diverse viewpoints. You want to avoid homogeneous teams where everyone thinks the same and works the same. So, easy way to do this is to include people from different departments with different backgrounds and experiences and amount of experience as well. Sometimes people who are new to the organization or position will ask questions that seem obvious and maybe silly, but they are so obvious that the people with more experience tend not to consider them. So you've got to overcome this challenge of people's natural tendency to work with the same people that they're used to. We want to enable independence in your organisation where systems are there for anonymous input, anything we can do to reduce social pressure in decision making. For example, we might ask people to share their thoughts on paper anonymously before a key meeting or discussion. So you want to balance this independence with the necessary coordination of working together. Designing smart systems. How do we aggregate this wisdom? What are the feedback loops we're going to do? So choosing the right tools here is key. And you've got to trust the process above all. You need to resist the urge to override collective decisions and accept that a lot of the time the crowds can outperform individual experts. The challenge here is maintaining faith during this initial implementation. So I hope you found that useful. If you do use collective intelligence in any structured way in your organisation, please let me know below. I'm always interested to hear how people are doing it where they work. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video.